You can think a whole list of old empires, been around for a long, long time. And when we were thinking of independence, anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism, we thought the age of empires had come to an end, and replacing it would be the nation state. A lot of things seem to change, but don't really change all that much. And something as ancient as empires that have been around for 4,000, 5,000 years all over the Eurasian landmass and in this part of the world, has it really gone away? In fact, the last few years I've got even more skeptical about my own prediction that the age of empires is over by reading all about the battles over companies, private companies, state companies with AIs and artificial intelligence, all the robotics and all the fantastic cyber and communication systems that are being built up today, and the fact that you can hack, get no privacy, all of us are exposed in one way or the other. Are we sure this is not something else that is operating in a very different kind of soft imperial penetration into our consciousness and becoming part of us, even picking up things about us of which we do not know how it comes about? Words like nations, empire, states, they don't actually have a fixed meaning. They have a particular meaning in a particular point of time.
In this current international order, the state is the main player. And even in the era of empires, you had a state, whether it was the monarchy or the church, but it functioned as a state, where it controlled the resources, it controlled people, it had influence over territory. But what you had alluded to earlier was a fundamental change where the state need not be the key player anymore, because it's about control of information, right? And it could be the corporates, it could be the people who control the Facebooks of the world and all that sort of thing. And that would fundamentally alter the way in which the world could function in the future. So even if we use the word empire to mean a kind of an order that had a mix of different sort of players with one overarching authority, then if we took away the state as a player, would that still be possible? Or you're going to see a world that is just a series of interconnected nodes of information control, or where the critical points of the economies are being controlled by corporates and not by states?
This question is inevitable after you spoke about empires. How would the return of a Chinese empire look like?
Well, I guess I asked for that. Well, you know, that's another very interesting word. The Chinese didn't have a word called empire. They used the word 天下, which doesn't actually translate as empire. And they also had no sense of borders. That's another side. If you look at every dynasty of China, if you look at the maps of all the dynasties of China, not the same borders. The borders were always changing. Of course, there was a core group. But even then, there were times when China was occupied by other people who were non-Chinese, conquered the whole of China. So the idea of a Chinese empire, which the Chinese talk about as if it had been continuous from the days of Confucius down to the present day, it's actually a kind of civilizational state, some people will call it. It expands its territory as more and more people become Chinese, assimilated into Chinese, or persuaded to become Chinese, or attracted by Chinese values and civilization. And as they grew, and as the people on the borders of China accepted more and more ideas from the Chinese, they became part of China. And was that an empire? It's very hard to say. There was definitely a Manchu empire, not a Chinese empire. The Manchus had conquered the Chinese. It was a Manchu empire that lasted for 250 years. But when it came to an end, they didn't go home. They're just part of China. So that makes this, confuses us about it. What kind of empire is that when people have got nowhere to go back home to? You know? They weren't a national empire.
Out of a former colony, a state in Malaysia, emerged a new nation state. And very quickly, an identity had to be built, right? You had to build rootedness, you had to give people a sense of home. And when, in a way, Singapore succeeded in doing that, it created that sense that, well, since this is home, then I'm entitled to certain rights and certain privileges by being a citizen of Singapore. And when those privileges and rights are challenged because of competition, then it generates a certain sense of xenophobia, right? A certain sense that why are these foreigners coming to take what is rightfully mine? So I think that partially answers your question. Prof. Wong was right to have alluded to the fact that to build that nation, to build that identity, the state played a very prominent role in creating that narrative, because you had to create a narrative to get the people to believe that this is the trajectory, this is where we've come from, this is where we'll go, and also give hope that the trajectory will always be a positive one. But I think history is going to be more complex moving forward, precisely for the reason that we talked about. There is going to be more effort and more involvement of many people in writing their histories, their part in the national history of Singapore. There's going to be social media that's going to open up the space, and there's going to be giving possibilities for young people like Hazim to engage in historical conversations. In the past, if you didn't attend a history class, if you didn't attend a talk like this, you're not going to engage. But now, on social media, you could engage. And I think that really opens up the field, and that makes it all the more important for historians, serious historians, to really be listening to many voices and to try to incorporate as much of these voices as possible in your own historical interpretation.